Hey, Dr. G here. Today we're going to talk about cold thermogenesis or cold adaptation as something you can add to your protocol. This is something that you particularly can add in the winter, especially if you live at a high latitude. So remember, the sun helps us deplete deuterium. And in the winter, if we live at high latitude, then we don't get as much sun. So one of the things that allowed humans to stay healthy, even though they lived somewhere that was maybe very cold and very dark, was cold adaptation. So you can use this in the winter. You can do it year round, but when it's warm and when you're getting lots of sun, you really don't need to do it as much. If for some reason you can't go in the sun, you could use cold thermogenesis to help yourselves out. So what's happened in the modern world is we have become indoor creatures. Their studies show that we spend 93 to 95% of our time inside, and we tend to cool and heat our dwellings for maximal comfort. And this minimizes our energy expenditure to keep our body temperature normal. Now, could this be one of the causes of the unprecedented epidemic of weight gain that's happening worldwide, with now 2.1 billion people obese or overweight? Now, the fossil record shows 5 major extinction events in the past, and geologists tell us that all 5 of these events were followed by an extended cold climate. Now, what does that mean? Well, why is that important? Well, what that means is somewhere hidden in our genetic programming, or possibly in our epigenetic program, is we have the ability to survive the cold. Because if we didn't, we wouldn't be here. So this is true of all animals. Now, are there any examples of humans that are cold adapted, have super abilities? Well, how about the Sherpa as a modern example? They were studied by NASA and are superhuman in many ways. Now, I've climbed with them on Himalayan peaks, and I can vouch for the amazing physical and mental strength that they have. They can carry massive amounts of weight, even though they aren't big guys usually. Now, Albert Schweitzer and Weston Price studied the Inuit, who live up in the cold, before they got the heated seats in their cars and artificial lights and warm houses and processed foods. After that, their health did decline dramatically. Now, but both these authors studied the Inuit before 1920, and they had no diabetes, heart disease, cancer, and they were resistant to infectious diseases. In other words, they were healthy and strong. Now, research shows, this is new research, shows we can get the benefits of cold without risking hypothermia. And that's because there's cold receptors in our skin and also in our mucous membranes in our mouth that send messages to our body that it's cold. So this cold message stimulates the death, it's called apoptosis, of fat cells, and it liberates the satiety hormone leptin from fat cells to reduce our hunger. This allows calorie restriction from a naturally decreased appetite and naturally reduced cravings for carbohydrate. Now, calorie restriction, you probably know, has been shown over the years in many different species, in many different studies, to be one of the most powerful anti-aging strategies. So here you can have natural calorie restriction without having to diet or without having to follow any plan. You just naturally eat less. Studies show cold stimulation can produce brown adipose tissue, which makes heat directly from stored fat. This is termed non-shivering thermogenesis. Now, there's another type of thermogenesis, shivering. That's where your muscles are shivering. Shivering thermogenesis burns fat, and it's stimulated by cold exposure. Now, when your muscles are burning calories with shivering, there's less collateral damage, like let's say you went for a run or did a CrossFit training session. Here, you're just sitting there, so you don't put as much wear and tear on your musculoskeletal system. So cold therapy can replace part of your exercise? Well, you'll still have the same benefits. You just have less wear and tear on the musculoskeletal system. Now, cold therapy causes the mitochondria, the little engines in us, to produce infrared light. This condenses water to shrink the distance between respiratory proteins. I'm not going to go into the deep biophysics here, but this dramatically increases our energy flows, our electrical current on our inner mitochondrial membrane to help our cells recycle the deuterium depleted water that's supposed to be contained inside the mitochondria. This higher electric current causes our kidneys to excrete deuterium. Now, you may notice that when you get in cold water that you feel the urge to urinate or to pee. That is the deuterium coming out. And this is a great way, a totally inexpensive way, and you'll find that you'll find yourself loving this. Cooling your mitochondria is kind of like when you store a battery in the refrigerator. It lasts much longer. So do you want to last much longer? Store your batteries in the refrigerator. Now, there is a risk of going into cold environments. Be sure to ask your doctor about your cardiovascular risk factors. It can trigger heart attacks and strokes. Review other health conditions with your doctor before you start doing the cold therapy. Now, after you get medical clearance, I recommend that you start the process with face dunks. So here you just get a large bowl, put ice in it, so you have ice water, you hold your breath, get a timer, hold your breath as long as you can. So here you might last 10 seconds, how I was when I started out, and then you'll gradually be able to hold your breath longer and longer. So you have that timer, you see how long you can hold your breath. The time will increase as you continue to do this. You do this every day, maybe 5 breath holds, or maybe 10 if you're really aggressive. Within a few days, you're going to be able to hold your breath longer and longer. And after about 2 weeks of doing this, when you feel like the face dunks are easy, you're looking forward to them because they start to feel good. At first, they hurt like hell, but then they feel good. And you're holding your breath for 30 seconds or even longer, maybe a minute. Then you're ready to go to the next step. The next step is to take a bag of ice and place it somewhere on your torso, like a 10-pound bag of ice, put it on your chest or your abdomen. Now, at first, that bag of ice, it'll be like burning pain. Your skin will turn beet red. So you put it on, see how long you can take it, and gradually, over a period of weeks, work yourself up to 30 to 45 minutes. Now, after a week or two, you might add a second bag of ice. Now, when you get to the point where you can tolerate 45 minutes of ice on your torso, then you can come up to the cold baths. Now, the cold baths, you can start these at 65, 70 degrees and gradually lower the temperature of the water with ice, or if you have natural cold water from your faucet. Now, our body temperature is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So anything below that is beneficial, but we get the biggest boost when we get the temperature down to about 55 to 50 degrees. Now, the duration can be anywhere from 5 minutes up to 45 minutes, depending on your goals and your tolerance. Now, when a large weight loss is needed, longer times will help you burn more fat. Now, hypothermia is not good, so you really need to monitor, and it can be dangerous and even lethal. So you want to have a spotter at first. Remember, if your skin stays red or pink, that's a good sign. If the extremities or skin begins to turn pale or becomes numb, that is a sign to get out of the cold. And possibly, if you feel like you're behind the 8 ball, get in a hot shower and warm up quickly. So have a spotter, especially when you're starting out. Now, cold exposure can be done anytime, but the best time to cold adapt is in the winter, where we don't have the sunlight. We don't need the cold so much to deplete our deuterium when we have plenty of sun. But at high latitude, in the short days of winter, that's when the cold therapy can save your butt. Now, what are the advantages of this besides helping you deplete deuterium. Well, you feel better during the winter. Like you can go out in your backyard without a coat on. You can drive with your windows down in your car. You enjoy the winter. You can go out in your shorts into the snow and it feels good. And you feel good about people looking at you go, how in the heck do you take that cold? Because if you do this step by step by step cold adaptation, then you enjoy the cold. Now, I couldn't imagine myself enjoying the cold. I used to dress like like I was going to the Arctic Circle to my son's baseball games because I had such an intolerance to cold. And the thought of me cold adapting was, oh no. But if you start with the face dunks, you just start with it and you just say, I'm going to do this. You do the face dunks. You brave the pain of dunking your face in the ice water, and pretty soon that becomes easy. Then you do the ice bags. Pretty soon that becomes easy. Then you get in the cold bath. That 50 to 55 degree water, that never is easy the first 30 seconds, but it's always tolerable. And you always feel better after you do it. But there's other things you can do. You don't have to get in the cold water. The reason the cold water is so effective is because of the conduction of cold water. Cold water conducts very well, and so you don't have to spend a lot of time. If you're in the air, air conducts much less. So by getting in the water, you reduce the time you need to do, and you get way more bang for your minute of cold exposure in cold water. But other things you can do, if you're not into that, or for whatever reason, you can turn down the thermostat in your house. If you turn your thermostat down to 60, 55, you're going to get a lot more cold exposure. During the winter, you can wear less clothes. Don't put on the coat until you start shivering, or don't overdress. Don't turn the heat on in the car. One thing I do to get a cold exposure while I'm driving to work, roll the windows down on a frosty morning, and the first 30 seconds that is painful, but after 30 seconds you get this feeling of, hey, this isn't so bad. You can go in the meat locker and wow everybody, I don't need a coat. You can go sledding in a swimsuit. That might be painful if you crash, but there are many creative ways that in the winter or when your environment is cold, you can think of, how could I get my cold on today? So cold exposure is good practice, and it also gets you out of your comfort zone, which is really important when we want to change aspects of our lives to something that's more conducive to the way we evolved in our environment. So our goal is to get closer to and become familiar with nature's ways and what mankind did in nature for thousands upon thousands of years, until in the past 200 years we changed everything. So now 1 in 2 men gets cancer, obesity is off the charts, autoimmune disease is off the charts. We have diseases exploding, and it's not too hard to go back to what have we done? What have we really changed in the last 200 years? And we've changed our light, and we've changed our temperature. And so we can change those things back, and we don't have to do it all the time. That's why the cold thermogenesis is doing a short period of time to cause the physiologic changes that we need to help us keep our deuterium down in the mitochondrial matrix, inside our engines, keep recycling that efficient fuel that we need so much if we want to avoid the Grim Reaper or the family doctor or the intensive care unit. This is Dr. G, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.